Alright, James Gunn's Superman teaser trailer has finally released, and this means that I'm going to analyze it
frame by frame.
So, let's get into it because I'm very excited for this film. Obviously, the trailer opens up on an establishing shot of a vast tundra in either the Arctic or Antarctic. In the comics, it goes back and forth which polar ice cap Superman's base resides in. This ancillary teaser trailer, posted all across social media pages from James Gunn to official DC, depicts the House of El crest engraved into a large sheet of cobalt metal. Seemingly it's the door of the Fortress of Solitude, based on, basic sci-fi bank vault-esque doors. And listening to the audio, we can hear a vast wind sweeping past. Also, in this shot of a theatrical teaser trailer released, we see Lex Luthor entering the Fortress of Solitude through this door with Ultraman and the Engineer. Taking a look at the biggest spoilers of all before we get any further into the trailer, the toys! A leaked McFarlane Toys upcoming list of figures and waves and whatnot was leaked about a month ago at the time of recording, and among other things that I'll get to, is this. DC Direct Superpowers playset Fortress of Solitude Superman movie. We also have Superman with Krypto, Lex Luthor with Baby KAIJU, Ultraman Metamorpho a Mega Fig KAIJU, meaning that it's going to be about 10 to 12 inches tall or so. Superpowers 5-inch figure line featuring Metamorpho, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, Ultraman. Also, vehicles, the T-Craft, seen here on set as a stand-in. And finally, Baby KAIJU and Baby Joe. Now, Baby Joe could just be a nod to Joe Shuster, co-creator of Superman, or it could be a reference to Mighty Joe Young, the giant gorilla of the 2 films of the same name. And what's a giant primate that Superman has fought? Titano! One version of him was created as an experiment to make a super weapon. But originally, he was a chimp sent to space that was irradiated by a kryptonite meteor. But there is also the kaiju itself. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of giant monsters that Superman has battled over his history, but one that I think this might take influence from is this. The Arctic Giant, a 1942 Fleischer Studios animated short of a massive kaiju monster found frozen in the Arctic, brought back to Metropolis. It escapes, wreaks havoc upon the city, threatening the life of Lois Lane and the citizens of Metropolis. And it's a short that also features a brief scene of a sports arena. Coincidence? Probably, but maybe not. The titular Superman himself plummets into the tundra, and now it's time for some speculation, like I haven't been doing that already. Perhaps he's attempting to return somewhere following a fight that rocked his Kryptonian world, hence why he calls to Krypto the Superdog. Maybe something happens at the fortress just before this. There is a plethora of characters and events going on in this film, so who knows what might be lurking at the fortress, or even broken into, or escaped. Alternatively, he could have been punched so hard that he wound up in the Arctic or Antarctic. That seems too coincidental. He's also not much in a hurry, and there's no other presence here other than that wonderful appearance by Krypto. So it's possible that whatever or whoever did this to him is in fact elsewhere and not currently going after him. Our first official look in motion format of David Corn Sweat's Superman lying in the snow, absolutely obliterated. And this is a personal preference, but I love how wrinkled his suit is. It's not skin tight like it has been in previous Snyder films, nor does it have the ridiculous muscular padding like the Superman and Lois show decided to go with for some reason. Please, for the love of God, James Gunn, don't let anyone add big fake muscles to his outfit in any future appearances. Hard cut to Metropolis during the day. Clark Kent races through the crowd of anachronistic folks. Another personal preference is the anachronism of the outfits. The general fashion, at least from what we've seen in Metropolis, seems to go from the early 70s to the 2020s, and I absolutely love it. It was a huge aspect of the 90s animated series, both Superman and Batman, to amalgamate all kinds of time periods together and truly create a world entirely of its own. And I'm so glad that we're finally getting a reality that isn't just Earth with a couple of super people in it. Anyway, Clark Kent weaves his way through the crowd with his very cool messenger bag. And I'm not just saying that because I, too, use a messenger bag. In one hand, Clark carries a Daily Planet newspaper reading "Hammer Creates Havoc in Downtown," with a photo of something. If you have any ideas, let me know right now before I taint your mind with my reading of it. Doesn't it kind of look like Gorilla Grodd? At least from his appearance that we see of him in the cameo in the Creature Commandos. Alternatively, it could just be a plume of smoke, but that's a pretty shitty photograph. In his other hand, he has 2 Clark Kent ID badges for some reason. Probably lost one, got a replacement, and then found the old one if I had to guess. Clark continues past these 2 guys having an intense conversation, walking past a business named the Wounded Duck, a Future's End reference, and into the Daily Planet, which as we all know is located at 449 Concord Street, Metropolis. But this building isn't just the home of hard-hitting journalism, it also has a cafe with freshly made cupcakes, red velvet coconut, and lemon. Superman bleeding from his mouth, super subsonically whistling for crypto. The first official look at the Daily Planet bullpen. It looks incredible. One of the tickers at the foremost screen reads, "Tech stocks tumble over data and privacy concerns." I am in love with this absolutely beautifully designed layout of the entire floor and the wonderfully put together costuming. Fantastic job to everybody working on that. I know you're watching. Clark walks across the bullpen on his cell phone as Steve Lombard, played by Beck Bennett of SNL fame, walks past. Cat Grant walks with a cup of coffee, sort of leading Clark, it seems, and I think that's Perry White in the background, working away at something. Steve Lombard does react to Clark walking past. He kind of shoots his arms out and gets annoyed at Clark for just kind of absent-mindedly walking by. Or maybe it's like a, "Hey, welcome back, there he is," kind of gesture. Like maybe Clark just got back from an assignment or something, and that's why all those papers are stacked up on his desk. Lois Lane, I don't know how they did it, but somehow they have managed to collect Lois Lane from the pen and paper two-dimensional comic universe and make her 3D, and her name is Rachel Brosnan. She reads the same paper as she walks back from the coffee maker. The news ticker along the back reads, "Towns flooded following extreme weather," from GBS News. This is Galaxy Broadcasting, Galaxy Communications, a creation of Jack Kirby after he took over Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Galaxy Communications at one time owned the Daily Planet, and the owner, Morgan Edge, attempted to have Clark Kent assassinated after Kent wrote a news piece on Edge's ties to Intergang, a criminal organization with ties to Darkseid. The other screen reads, "Concerns grow as tensions rise. Is Eastern Europe?"
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
This is, of course, a reference to possibly Creature Commandos or the Baravian situation that we'll discuss later. Oh my god. Holy shit. Sat upon Clark Kent's desk among piles of paper is a tub of peanut butter. Oh my god. If you're wondering why I'm freaking out, just watch this. Hey, Blake T. Wild here, and have you ever just sat around and wondered how much peanut butter Superman could eat? In Action Comics number 327 from 1965, Superman fan B.L. Bogema Jr. wrote DC editorial letter in which he described Superman's super energy and what he would need to consume to accomplish his daring feats. Mr. Bogema Jr.'s answer to this question was 1,750 tons of peanut butter, or 4 boxcars worth. Ending his letter, he asked DC to show Superman eating this exorbitant amount of peanut butter, but they never did. Which is why I have started a petition that you can find in the description to make Superman eat a lot of peanut butter in the upcoming Superman Legacy film. Start the hashtag peanut butter for Superman. It worked! My internet campaigning worked! We got a jar of peanut butter on Superman's desk. Superman canonically eats peanut butter thanks to me. But that's not stopping my excitement, because Jimmy Olsen appears. Jimmy Olsen is one of my all-time favorite comic characters. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen is one of my favorite comics. I'm so excited to see Skylar Gisondo, or Gisondo, I don't know, play the role. Lois Lane, looking back, kind of reveals a little more of the newspaper. Clark turns around and we get a lovely Jimmy Olsen neckline in the extreme foreground. There's also some very interesting artwork along the walls of the Daily Planet. The left seems to focus on the original newspaper methods, while the right kind of shows a television and what I assume is a radio. The Kent farm in Smallville, Clark sits with his father, Jonathan Kent, and I really hope that this universe keeps both Kents alive, because I'm sick and tired of both of them dying. But the scene of Clark embracing his father does worry me. Although I do believe that this is a misdirect. Maybe it's something like, they're running out of money and lost the farm, or the land was bought out by a company like Luthor Corp, or it's Jonathan giving Clark an emotional speech and he breaks down in the middle and provides Clark with a much-needed reinvigoration that he needs. Jonathan could just be worried about Clark being Superman and how much tension that would bring to know that his son is facing these extreme challenges daily and the possibility of him getting seriously or even mortally wounded, and Clark trying to reassure him that he'll be okay. Here's Crypto, the super dog, trailing across the tundra, being a good little cute boy. Clark tells Crypto to take him home, so who knows what that could possibly mean. I think it's Smallville. The next shot is one everyone loves because when was the last time we saw a superhero actually being a hero? The massive foot of a kaiju smashes down onto something, probably a truck, that sends these tanks flying off towards a young, incredibly oblivious girl. And this does take place in Metropolis because there is a Metropolis Meteors baseball flag on the street post, along with a Ross street sign referencing, of course, Alex Ross, famous comic artist. Lex Luthor watching Superman fly by from atop his Luthor Corp office. The famous Toronto Tower is apparently also situated in Metropolis. Hard cut to the incredibly designed Luthor Corp building with this bridge office thing that I love. Looking closer, we can see the engineer, played by Maria Gabriela de Faria, a member of the Authority, going in through the rooftop via a hatch, and inside are about 5 other people: Lex Luthor, and I'd imagine his assistant and love interest, Eve Teschmacher, and his henchman Otis. The others I'm not sure, possibly Rick Flag Sr., and Ultraman, if I'd have to guess. Lex Luthor in a tux, wearing a golden pinky ring with an antique revolver, and it appears he's in some kind of strange warehouse with paneled walls. But up next, we see Superman smashing his way out of what I believe are the aforementioned strange warehouse with paneled walls. They're laid out roughly the same way, and what I initially thought were strange statues wearing shorts, holding balls of light, are actually, based off this leaked coffee mug from the production of the film, Metamorpho. It's just his reflection in the other cells along the weird glass windows. Seemingly, he's created a artificial sun out of himself to power up Superman. And there's also a little stool or bucket toilet thing in this strange metahuman prison. So is Lex Luthor experimenting on metahumans or something? Is this like a Project Cadmus thing? That seems like something they'd be a part of. And in the cells next to him are a man, possibly Jimmy Olsen, I don't really know, and what looks like a shoeless woman. Maybe Lois? It's very hard to tell who they are, or they could just be random people who have been imprisoned. Superman then smashes his way out, and the exterior resembles the dark blue hue of Lex in the previous scene. Perhaps his revolver is loaded with kryptonite bullets. And in what is possibly the most emotional scene of this trailer is the young boy calling out to Superman in the midst of a war ground as he hoists a flag. This seems to mostly be civilians running away from what I'd imagine is an invading army. They're mostly carrying tools, axes, pickaxe, sledgehammers, stuff like that. And there's really only one person with an actual weapon, and it's this man in the center with a bulletproof vest, helmet, and rifle. And he seems more like possibly a peacekeeping officer, or just a kind of security officer for these people. Although we do see military troops behind the boy as he embraces the flag. A man throwing a can at Superman's head as he marches into the Stag Industries building. Note his battle-damaged suit, because I'll talk about that later. The lobby of Stag Industries, Superman leans against this high-tech info table as the crowd outside freaks out. There's a double helix-esque chandelier thing hanging from the ceiling. That's neat. The Stag Industries logo, followed by Guy Gardner, Hawk Girl, and Mr. Terrific, all arriving to meet or possibly reconvene with Superman. And Guy Gardner essentially fires his handgun into the air as he blasts his ring to scare the crowd away. And this seems to be after a battle, most likely with the KAIJU we see later in the trailer, due to Superman's battle-damaged suit and the fact that Mr. Terrific is still wearing his little flight suit thingy. Hawk Girl, in the midst of the aforementioned battle, wearing her Terrifics uniform. I'll just call them the Terrifics from now on. The massive fire-breathing kaiju attacking Superman in Metropolis, the reason that his suit is charred. A scene far later on in the film, the massive orb outside is the talk of many. Some believe it's Solaris, a star-like robotic computer. Others have been putting forward that maybe it's more related to creature commandos, and it could possibly be something related to Cersei and her magic combined with Guy Gardner's ring, as the green energy seems to be directed from another direction. Or others think it's Brainiac. Who's to say? Probably only James Gunn, I'd imagine. Lois Lane and Clark Kent in love. A Superman robot. Featured prominently within All-Star Superman, specifically the climax in which Robot 7, after having realized that Lex Luthor hacked into the system at the Fortress of Solitude, sacrifices itself to help Superman defeat Solaris. Also, the robot is holding something in his hand. Kind of looks like a screwdriver. Alan Tudyk was recently announced to be a part of this film, and it would not shock me if he was voicing the Superman robots. Incredibly detailed and kind of off-putting look at Metamorpho, played by Anthony Carrigan. Massive destruction and mayhem within Metropolis as buildings collapse. Lex Luthor in his office, news footage playing. Obviously, he's been part of some extreme event. His head and face are cut up, his suit is torn and charred, but he's also crying. Could Eve Teschmacher have been killed, either by an external force or by Lex himself? Perhaps the Authority, who Lex thought would have his back, saw that he wasn't necessary or needed anymore, and they killed off Eve in front of him. Perhaps Ultraman did so and goes a little rogue. There's another piece of news footage of the child with the flag on a Luthor Corp brand television. Baravian, the news footage reads, Baravian troops amassing at the border with the ticker reading, discuss current level of threat, live reports coming in from the Baravian border, tensions. So what this means is that Baravian troops are amassing at their border to enter another country. Now, in Creature Commandos Episode 4, the country of Yarnpur is mentioned. Yarnpur is a magical, vaguely Asian, Indian, Middle Eastern country in the comics, and actor Fahim Fasli commented that he has been cast as a Yarnpurian village leader. Bravia appeared in Superman number 2, where in the midst of a civil war, the issue sees an advanced form of poisonous gas stolen and taken to the country where it's attempted to be used upon the civilian population before Superman stops this, and he then forces a peace agreement between the two sides and the civil war ends. So what I'm thinking is that, based on the fact that it says Baravian troops are amassing at the border, Baravia is invading Yarnpur, and that these people are Yarnpurians, perhaps members of the same village. I'm thinking that this establishes a scene involving a scenario similar to that early in Superman Birthright regarding the African sequence in which Clark visits an African country to interview a political leader and activist who is then assassinated. This is a continuation of the scene between Superman and the KAIJU. This is either its foot or maybe its head, although there are tentacles in the upper hand corner of the screen, so maybe it's its arm or something. But anyway, the lights inside seem to be the same orange hue as the Stag lights in the Stag Industries lobby. Crypto being a good boy, the strange figure in all black with an Ultraman belt buckle known only as Ultraman. He was seen many months ago during some set leaks featuring the engineer, Rick Flag Sr., and himself arresting Superman. Obviously, this isn't what Ultraman has ever looked like in the comics. This, to me, more closely resembles Doomsday when he was in his containment suit. Containment suit. Who in this cast could possibly need contained? Could Ultraman maybe be Metamorpho, working as either a lackey security guard enforcer for Lex Luthor, sold out to the government, or perhaps Lex is trying to clone Metamorpho, or there's some kind of, like I mentioned earlier, metahuman experiments going on, and Ultraman is a Metamorpho experiment byproduct. Maybe Metamorpho was simply an early experiment by Stag Industries to create a super soldier, and then Lex took it over, and Ultraman is the ultimate end-all result. There are, however, theories that Ultraman is simply a bizarro clone of Superman, so the test experiment thing could still be true. Superman battling the engineers, they tear their way through the Metropolis Meteors Arena. Our first close-up look at Mr. Terrific at a Luthor Corp base on a beach, or desert. Quite like his look, and the fusion of the T on his face being almost a faceplate into makeup just looks fantastic. It's so striking how it just kind of fuses into his face. And behind him, of course, we can see some Luthor Corp advanced soldiers. So, what could this all be about? Seemingly, that's Lois Lane in the center next to Terrific, as his T-spheres engage and form a protective shield as these soldiers open fire, and the Hawaiian shirt-wearing folks dive for cover. We do know this is, in fact, a Luthor site, because the barrel says LC and set leaks from Cleveland shooting several months ago. Also, the soldiers' outfits do resemble Lex's comic book power armor. But why are they turning against Mr. Terrific, and when does this take place? Because his suit isn't the stag orange themed, it's the classic Mr. Terrific attire. Superman and Lois in love once more. Lois is also in her classic purple attire. Superman engulfed in flames, seemingly from the kaiju before he rockets away. And finally, Lois and Superman watching the battle taking place in the night sky. So, here is what I'm thinking for the general timeline of the film from the clips that we have seen thus far. There is some kind of corporate metahuman secret war going on. It's essentially the original Ultimate Marvel universe with all these different organizations trying to create their own super soldiers with powers and abilities. Stag Industries and or Lord Tech, Maxwell Lord is appearing in this film, played by Sean Gunn, and the suits of the characters in the Terrifics do have the Lord Tech logo on it, has created their own privatized superhero team, the Terrifics or whatever they decide to call them. They're orange, white, and black color themed. Meanwhile, Luthor has his whole ordeal going down via genetics, Metamorpho, the Kaiju, metahuman experiments, Ultraman. According to the rumors, Superman has been active for a handful of years, but it's an existence that he feels alone at. He's an optimistic outcast in a world full of self-entitled super freaks who are more prone to violence and just getting the job done rather than actually keeping people safe. It's Kingdom Come meets What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. I think that the Baravian invasion starts off the film. Superman intervenes in the conflict, which Luthor is profiteering off of. Perhaps Clark Kent is on an assignment there, and he uses that as an excuse to, take care of things. It wouldn't surprise me if the Baravian troops had Luthor Corp battle suits, or even if that camp setup is some kind of Black Ops Luthor Corp command station for the Baravians. And I think that since that starts the film off, that's why Clark is late to work. Eventually, a massive kaiju is unleashed. It's a distraction for Lex and the Authority to break into the Fortress of Solitude. And while this is happening, the Terrifics of Stag Industries come into the fray. They fight the kaiju in a haphazard manner with the exclusion of Mr. Terrific, who might still be a bit reckless, but not to the degree of Hawk Girl or Guy Gardner. Superman, however, actually works to save people before he focuses on the kaiju. Superman realizes there's something wrong with this fight, and or an alarm or signal is sounded that only he can hear from the fortress itself, letting him know that Lex has broken in. And realizing that there's more important things to worry about right now, like someone breaking into the fortress, he leaves mid-battle, leaving Metropolis alone to fight this giant monster with only the Terrifics at hand. Where Superman returns to the Fortress of Solitude. Note the suit, it's charred over from the fire of the kaiju, it's charred after the fight in the Stag lobby scenes, and it's charred over in the scene of Superman at the fortress holding the dead robot, possibly Kellex. But it's not charred over when he's arrested or imprisoned, so that happens later. The kaiju is defeated either through the Terrifics or the return of Superman after he realizes that the fortress has been pilfered and plundered, and then he returns to a very angry Metropolis and meets up with the Terrifics to have some sort of superhero tete-a-tete. Eventually, Ultraman, who many think, like I said, is a clone of Superman, and the Authority are brought in to take down Superman himself. The duo, along with Rick Flag Sr., arrest Superman, and he is then taken into the massive complex where we see him at within the film. So why is he arrested? The general consensus is that Lex Luthor frames him for something. Lois begins investigating Lex's ties to everything that's happening, and Mr. Terrific has become swayed by Superman and sees what is happening to the Man of Steel after he's locked away and decides to go rogue. Hence his outfit change during the scene in the camp with Lois, and I imagine he ends the film as a new hero going in the direction of Superman. Superman is taken to the metahuman prison where he meets Metamorpho. Metamorpho helps a weakened Superman escape by creating a small artificial sun to power him back up. Superman crashes out, faces threats of Luthor Corp guards, or more likely, Ultraman and or the Authority. He gets his ass kicked, but uses all of his remaining strength to escape the prison, metamorpho, possibly sacrificing himself in the meantime, and flies himself to the Arctic. Krypto is then called and takes him back to Smallville, where he recuperates with Ma and Pa Kent on the farm. Martha is probably more open to the idea of her son fighting for what's right, and while Jonathan agrees, he might be more apprehensive about losing his boy, viewing the superhero idea from a more pessimistic side than his wife does, especially after Krypto brought Clark back in the condition that we see him in. Superman eventually returns to Metropolis, reveals his identity to Lois, and the final climax of the film begins. The KAIJU, Solaris, Brainiac, Circe, whatever the hell it is, attacks Metropolis. Superman saves the day alongside a couple of the other heroes throughout the film. Lex Luthor gets off somewhat scot-free. The end. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, theories, and anything that I missed. Check out my videos on all kinds of comics, and specifically some Superman comics. And I'll see you next time. Bye.